Have you done any color work and would you have any tips? Oh girl, let me show you the piece that I'm working on right now. I tend to alternate between color work and lace work, and sometimes I do cable knitting, but not all that much. The piece that I'm working on right now is this feminism vest that I've been making for a little while. It's on 2s and 3s and it's taking me a little bit, and you can see the stranding in the back. The yarn is quite thin and I wanted the piece to be really warm and I wanted a consistent texture throughout. So even after I finished the significant amount of color work here on the bottom, I'm continuing the stranding on the top, and I just added some little extra stars up here or whatever because I wanted it to be the same thickness everywhere. I find that when I do color work, if a part of the pattern has significant stranding and then I switch to an area that's just plain in one color, I don't like the change in thickness and the change in tension. So here's the front of the sweater. So you can see here, I get to this point where the pattern ends and I've continued to do the stranding of the yellow along the back so that it feels really nice and consistent. I don't know if anybody else is like this, but I have a very hard time sitting still. I did a video quite a while ago about how knitting is kind of the original stem. Handwork that is traditionally done by women is like the original stem. Spinning, knitting, embroidery, mending, and hand sewing clothes. If I'm not knitting and I'm not spinning with a drop spindle, then I'm going to be sewing. I prefer hand sewing my clothes. I do have a couple of sewing machines, but I prefer sewing by hand, especially when we're talking about garments. And I really, really love to knit. One of the greatest gifts I was ever given was when I was 18 years old, and my friend Kathy taught me how to knit in a college dorm kitchen. I have taken that with me through my entire life. I'm so grateful that she taught me that skill. I don't actually end up knitting all that much for myself. I've probably, I've knit myself a few sweaters and several vests. I tend to prefer vests. I think that they're easier to layer, and we do a lot of hiking outdoors, and I like to be able to add or remove garments, and I just prefer vests to sweaters. I think I also prefer vests because most of the yarn I get, I either spin myself or I get it from the thrift store, and that means it's often really limited quantities. So if you do color work, I only need 1 ball of this and a half a ball of this from the thrift store, and I can put that all together, and look at that, I have enough yarn for a vest. I will say 2 main things that I have learned about color work and maybe about myself and how I prefer to knit color work. One is making sure that I really have that tension nice and loose for the yarn that I am carrying across the back. For me, that means when I'm carrying that piece across the back, I'm really intentional about making sure I have a lot of slack. I often will pinch it a little bit to make sure that it's loose, because otherwise when I block it, it will look kind of puckered and uneven. So I make sure I defer to my stranding being quite loose. The second thing I've learned about color work is that I vastly prefer a steeked pattern. Whether it is a cardigan or whether it is a vest. If it's a cardigan, I want to be able to knit it in the round and be able to steek it up the front. If it's a vest, this is a bad example. I didn't do it with this one. I prefer a pattern where I steek the armpits, and I just go much quicker. I get much less frustrated. I make fewer mistakes if I don't have to do color work on the purl side, if it's all on the knit side. So I guess I would say don't be afraid of steeking. I love it. Pick a nice wool that's like really felty and will hold those stitches together when you steek it. I prefer the crocheted steek method versus the sewn steek method. But don't be afraid of steeking. Gosh, it makes your life so much easier if you are doing color work for a sweater. So thank you for your question. As somebody who's been knitting for 27 years and is obsessed with knitting, I could talk about it all day long, and I love it when I get questions about any of the projects that I'm working on or techniques.